All right, let's step directly into the boots of an operator. In this explainer, we're going to trace the stark, chronological descent from being a novice candidate entering the absolute hardest selection course in the US military, all the way to becoming a silent legend. We're breaking down the intense psychological and physical journey of a 28-year career in Delta Force, based entirely on the harrowing real-world accounts detailed in our source material. Let's dive right in.
Now, consider the sheer statistical impossibility of the selection phase for a second. You arrive with a decade of elite special ops experience under your belt. Yet out of 140 top-tier candidates, we're talking hardened Green Berets and Rangers. Fewer than 15 are going to make it. And here's the truly wild part. Nobody is actually kicked out. They all just quit. That whole Hollywood image of an instructor screaming in your face to break you, yeah, scratch that. It doesn't exist here. You've already passed that stage in your career. Here, they literally just watch you.
So you really got to ask yourself, what kind of mental fortitude does it take to survive that? Think about Ramirez, right? A hardened Green Beret, 2 intense deployments, easily one of the toughest guys you'll ever meet. And he gives up on day 2. He gets lost on a ridge during a storm, ends up walking 7 hours in the completely wrong direction. And when an instructor finally spots him, Ramirez simply packs up his gear. He wasn't scared. He was just broken by the absolute crushing isolation of the Appalachian Mountains. He realized his mind just wasn't built to be alone with his thoughts for that long.
So that brings us to phase 1, the hardest selection. This is where the filter gets real. You're handed a map, a compass, and a rucksack. No teammates, 0 instructors running beside you. Just you, the mountain, and a secret time limit. The progression is basically torture. Your ruck starts at 18 kilos and quietly creeps up to over 30. You're walking distances most people don't drive in a week, totally isolated. And then comes the grand finale, the long walk, 40 brutal miles through the mountains, exhausted, completely sleep-deprived. And the true agony here, you never know the time limit. You literally have no idea if you're going too slow and already failing, or if you're pushing too fast and about to blow out a knee. When you finally cross that last checkpoint, there's no applause. An instructor just checks a clipboard and tells you to go sleep.
Alrighty, moving right along to phase 2. From novice to operator. Here's the kicker. Surviving selection just means you've earned the right to start at the absolute bottom all over again. You step into a room full of guys who've been pulling off the impossible for a decade, and guess what? You're officially the new guy. But before you even join them, there's a 6-month operator training course. You are mastering sniper precision until reloading under extreme pressure is just like breathing. You're doing offensive driving that'll completely churn your stomach, learning totally unlisted entry methods, and picking up foreign languages for urban surveillance. You graduate feeling, well, invincible, only to join your troop and be told to just carry the heavy ammo boxes, sit quietly, and clean the weapons that the senior guys just used. You know, there is this jarring contrast between regular military glory and Delta Force. Take your troop leader Hollis, for example. He perfectly embodies this. The guy is 42 years old, he's been through 3 divorces, has 7 totally undocumented deployments, and 0 public recognition. None. In Delta, you're swearing ultimate loyalty and risking everything, but the whole hierarchy is built purely on missions, not on medals. And your very first mission, you are at the absolute back of the stack, covering the rear, just praying you don't mess up the whole shebang. Eventually, though, you specialize. You become a sniper. You learn to read the wind just by watching how grass bends at 200 meters out. And then one night, you find yourself on a rooftop with your spotter, Devlin, lining up a split-second, literal life-or-death shot from 800 meters away. You run the math in your head, adjust for the humidity and the temp, and you pull the trigger. Now that bullet takes just over a second to cross those 800 meters. You hit the target perfectly, saving your assault team. But there was this unidentified figure standing right behind the target who, it turns out, was an armed bodyguard. Everyone pats you on the back and calls it a perfect shot, but the psychological weight, that lingering heavy uncertainty of not knowing who was standing behind that target during that 1-second bullet flight, that's going to haunt you forever. Decisions here are made in an absolute instant, but you carry them for a lifetime. Which brings us to phase 3. Leadership and family sacrifice. So you reach level 4. You're a team leader now, in charge of 6 men. You're literally writing mission reports while the blood is still drying on your boots. But this is also the exact moment your civilian life starts to violently fracture. You vanish on these secret flights to unnamed continents, and you come back months later carrying invisible trauma. And when your 7-year-old daughter looks at you and asks why you have to leave so much, the only explanation you're authorized to give is this hollow, generic phrase, "I work for the government."
She accepts it at 7, sure, but you know deep down there's no way she's buying that at 12. The domestic collateral damage is just profound. After one particularly brutal mission that nearly cost the lives of 2 of your guys, your wife Sarah drops a devastating reality check. It's 4 a.m., you're in the kitchen, and without any tears or yelling, she just looks at you and says she doesn't know what version of you is going to walk down the stairs anymore. And it hits you. No amount of public medals could ever fix this. Fast forward a bit, and your colleague Kessler takes his own life 6 months after a deployment. You go to his funeral in plain civilian clothes because your actual uniform isn't even allowed in the photos. Next up is Phase 4, the burden of command. As you move up to troop chief and senior leader, the filter completely shifts again. Your job goes from actively kicking down doors to, well, sending your closest friends into the dark instead. And the really frustrating reality of command? Look at this chart. You're spending 80% of your time on administrative paperwork. You become this critical bridge between young, inexperienced officers and your veteran operators. You find yourself having to quietly pull aside a really smart, but totally unseasoned West Point captain named Prescott to tactfully fix his flawed tactical plan in the Horn of Africa just to ensure your men don't walk blindly into a deadly crossfire.
It's a cruel irony, really. The further you move away from the physical battlefield and into these tactical operation centers, the heavier the emotional toll actually becomes. You and Sarah end up signing divorce papers, not even out of anger, just pure exhaustion. You move into a quiet, empty apartment. And the funerals, they just start piling up. 5 funerals in 18 months, 2 from combat and 3 from suicide, including the tragic loss of Bauer, a young operator you personally mentored. In this unit, the combat isn't actually what takes out the most men. It's the deafening silence that follows.
So by the time you're sitting in the Pentagon as a senior advisor, arguing with politicians who literally do not have the security clearance to even hear the truth about what you do, your body is basically failing. You're held together by anti-inflammatories, surviving on maybe 4 hours of sleep a night. You've had 2 knee operations, a fused vertebra from a botched jump 15 years ago, and permanent ringing tinnitus in your left ear from all the breaching charges. And your nights? They're spent handwriting condolence letters to widows, sitting in quiet suburban living rooms, holding answers that you are legally forbidden to give them.
Which leads us to Phase 5, the final filter. After 28 years of defining your entire existence by a secret you can never fully tell, you hand over your unit patch. This 28-year timeline right here, it's like an inverted hero's journey. You traded your physical endurance for incredibly deep isolation. Your retirement ceremony isn't packed with press or grandstanding politicians. It's held in a small room with about 50 people, literally the only people on Earth who actually know what you did. Your commander reads a deliberately vague citation. No names, no specific countries. Your entire 28-year career reduced down to a small shadow box sitting behind glass. The very next day, you take a contractor job. You're sitting in an office with bland gray carpet. You still wake up at 5 a.m., knees aching, to go for a run. And you keep your headphones cranked all the way up just to drown out that permanent ringing in your ears. I mean, the pay is good, sure, but it isn't the same. Honestly, nothing ever will be again. Now, those young operators, they'll call you at odd hours. They ask about upcoming deployments, about their failing marriages, about that creeping darkness between tours. And you try your best to warn them. You tell them that the ultimate test of Delta Force never actually stops. But most of them, they just nod and head right back to their squadrons, looking exactly like you did at 26, standing in the rain, totally convinced that the physical mountain was the only enemy you'd ever have to conquer. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this one provocative thought to chew on. Knowing all of this, knowing the absolute isolation, the fractured families, and the massive invisible burdens just waiting at the end of the journey, would you still take that very first step into the mountains? Keep that in mind as you process the immense, completely unseen sacrifices of the people operating in the shadows.